Hello and welcome to BWTV. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Aniruddha Bhagwat, who is co-founder and CEO for Ideosphere Consulting. Welcome, Aniruddha.
Hi, thank you so much. Really glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
In this dialogue today, we would discuss how digital-led uh, media is now kind of pushing PR professionals to change their methodologies, change their strategies. We would also understand how do you navigate the complexities of maintaining corporate ethos and transparency in communication. And also, you also emphasize on storytelling or message first a lot. We will also decode that. And what are some of the strategies that you deploy to kind of ensure the synchronization between corporate messaging across diverse media platforms? Uh, just to start with, your emphasis on message first, story first, that kind of communication. How do you how do you understand, or how do you make other people understand that why you so different?
Well, it's not about being different. And that's one of the things that we've seen is that when we've looked at branding in the past, right, Resham, we've always focused on the difference, right? And I was taught very early as I was studying marketing that branding is difference, and so that's great until differences run out. Today, every category, unless you're a category creator, you have other competitive brands, entities, organizations which are very closely synonymous. And let's look at a use case of employer branding, for example, right? Every organization is wanting to showcase their values. Every organization is trying to be a great place to work. Every organization is trying to showcase how working there would be really great. And if you look at that from a different use case, which is to get a customer, every depending on the category you're talking, bigger, faster, smaller, shorter, depending on what is beneficial for the customer. But what is happening is with more and more brands coming in, we've seen that the differentiation between each is getting smaller and smaller. One. Two, the entry point or the moat that you build around your differentiation, unless you are very strong in innovation or technology or have an IP, is hard to defend. And in these type of cases, it is not necessarily differentiation that will win. It's honesty, it's transparency, it is authenticity. And that is where we've realized that if you are able to create a message about your organization that stands for yourself and obviously contextualize it to the use case that you're looking at, that message is the perfect moat, if you will, and it is defendable because it's your opinion as an organization. And what we've said is that if you can focus on the message, if you can focus on making sure your messages are simple, which means they're easy to understand, they're relevant, which means they're contextualized to the environment, and they're intentional, which means that there is at least an intent in the message to kind of drive some kind of action, some kind of behavior, or some kind of change in thinking or inspire people to think, that would be a great message. And there you're not talking about how am I different, you're just talking about who am I. And there's a conversational shift that you're making there, and that's what we are really focusing on.
Very well put. I got to know three eyes, and now I understand that when you must have studied about what communication is a decade or more so ago, things were different. There have been a lot of transformations all across, be it digital coming in, be it AI coming in, uh, be it the surge in social media's attention. A lot of things. There are many waves coming in now. How do you kind of put two to three major trends in a bracket that have formed this PR industry in last 10 years?
One major trend has been obviously social media and digital, right? It came along in weirdly our batch. I mean, my batch when I did my MBA at Symbiosis, our batch was the last batch that did not have social media and digital. They had digital, but social media as part of their curriculum. So we are kind. I find myself, and probably like the 2004, 5, 6, 7. I find myself at the cusp of probably the where social media started being a viable business medium rather than it just being out there. When I was in college, Orkut was big and it kind of fell apart, and then Facebook came in. But from a marketing view, it really started coming in much later, and we didn't have a lot of courses on that. So everything, in fact, everybody who passed out during my generation, we've learned a lot of things on the fly. We've learned by making mistakes, by understanding, and all of those things. So social media was a big trend, Resham. And the reason why it was a big trend is because the consumer finally got a voice, and they got a voice and a platform to be able to speak back at the brand or whoever is speaking to. Otherwise, earlier, largely it was brand to many communication. There was no communication back, right? Today we can talk about brands, we can talk back to brands, we can talk back to people, we can have a conversation. This really changed. And also accessibility. Today you have an access, or I have an access to reach out to any CEO of any company because they're on social media, right? We didn't have the access before. It was a great leveler because it put the power in the hands of the consumer again. It gave them access, it gave them reach, it gave them messaging. So I felt one big trend is the social media and digital social media trend. The second biggest trend is probably what happened, and no, and not in any particular order, but probably what happened in the pandemic, right? We realized that there is a different way to run the world, not just work, not just live. There is a different way to run the world, and technology, collaborative technology, the infrastructure that came in allowed us to be able to continue work without stepping out of our homes. Now obviously we are in a different phase today, but what that taught us is that we are extremely resilient when it comes to communication and messaging. We can continue business the way it is, although in a different context. We can ensure that we can work in any type of environment, which means that messaging and communication became much more important. And I felt that the the changes in the way where we work, the changes in the way that people consume media, and the way that the pandemic forced a lot of penetration and adoption of those platforms definitely was a trend as well, which changed a lot of things. And the third is, well, I guess debate. I don't know if it's debatable, but the third is the both of these things together allowed us to have a larger voice, and which means that brands and leaders needed to be much more careful in terms of what they're saying, because it's reached out to a larger diaspora at one point of time. And while they were talking one to many, it was as good as talking one to one, because that person could actually respond. And this shift made it clear that every leader and every brand must think about the words that they're using, the messages that they're communicating, and what impact do they have. In a sense, the consequence of any message increased multifold in the last decade or so, because of the fact that the message had more reach, had more speed, and the message could be responded to. So to conclude, these are the three trends. One is, I think, social media. Two is our ability to be resilient, and what we learned during the pandemic of how we can work on a digital diaspora. And third is, the the society has become more sensitive. We have become
Yeah.
more, it's more critical as to what we say, because we can get called out for it.
With this that you have put it very, I mean, very intensively in the end, that people are now more sensitive. I mean, if I put it forward, I would say the information, the message, the companies who are working on their communication or image building are now more prone to this.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
how are
There-
you dealing with it? And your initial thoughts on this? How are you looking at this? This is being the buzzword in these times, but on a serious note, this is a very, very alarming thing that communication leaders need to think about, need to talk about. What strategies can help you there? What has been your experience like?
so the first thing is, I'm not sure if the world has become more sensitive, maybe in certain aspects, and I know I said it, but I also feel that it could be the perception of, because now all of a sudden we have a platform to actually speak. Maybe these voices were always there, but nobody had a platform to speak. Okay, so I must correct myself in that sense. But what are we seeing in communications? Because of messaging becoming more critical, you're
Hmm.
seeing communications becoming more important, not just in marketing and not just in reputation and not just in branding, but going across different departments. Everybody now that is communicating as an organization outside, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whether it's your management, whether it is your front end workers, everyone is communicating and representing the brand, which means that messaging and communication actually have a much larger responsibility, consequence, as well as opportunity for people like us,
True, true.
opportunity to say where can we look at it. For example, what was the entry point for a lot of marketing agencies or communication agencies, PR if you will, social, the entry point was often always the marketing department or the communications department, sometimes maybe the CEO's office. Today you're seeing more and more that even an HR department is calling for communications because they want to do employer branding, or it is strictly restricted at a board level who wants to do a transformation or who wants to be able to be very clear when they're doing a big shift or a pivot in the business. So the entry points of communication as an opportunity for our business has definitely increased. Communication is becoming much more important, discussed in things like, for example, I'm not sure, I was not working then, but I'm not sure if communication and PR or reputation played such a critical role in board level conversations than they do today. Because one mistake is not just going to cause bad PR, which is what we were always worried about, but it is also going to cause erosion of value, erosion of top line, erosion of revenue. The weirdly, so many years of my career, I spent answering the question of how does communication relate to top line. One thing is clear. I'm not sure if we're able to answer that yet, but one thing is sure that bad messaging, insensitive communication can definitely erode the top line. That is something that there are multiple evidences of, and whether it's top line or valuation. So the point is that there is definitely a bigger role that messaging is playing in businesses today than it ever has. And like I said, it has nothing to do with the message itself. It has to do with the platforms that allow those
Yeah,
messages
yeah.
to be.
Now that we have platform and accessibility, as you mentioned, we have many stakeholders that hold responsibility to kind of communicate about the brand or about themselves. Now we talking about the digital first. We seeing that a lot of younger brands coming in, giving preferences to social media, Instagram influencers, things like that. Where do you see the role of analytics coming in? Would you be kind of uh, utilizing AI in such a manner that you'll be able to see the measurability of the impact that your message are kind of reaching to the audience well and in an equal format?
Yeah, so I think analytics have been a game changer in that sense. When social came across it, you were able to measure finally in terms of what's the reach, how many people are engaging, what's the shareability of a piece of content, and I think the larger piece of analytics was able to break down the profiling, for example, demographics, behavioral. You could actually target specific people, specific communities, specific type of homogeneous sets, which made effectively the marketing better. It made it more efficient. It made the cost of delivery or cost of delivering a message reduce, and which meant that the impact was much higher. So I think with the whole digital transformation, I think, or rather digital, with the social media proliferation, I think analytics have been a big advantage to us to finally prove that what we are doing, and also to use as comparatives, right? Because the first time analytics are done, you don't know if that's good or bad, but you use that as a benchmark to keep moving forward in terms of where you're going. But however, I would also say that from an analytics perspective, and you mentioned AI also, but from an data analytics view, I think analytics will only measure historically what has happened and be able to make it understandable to take certain actions about, right? AI in that sense is completely different. AI is about predicting what are those data points of the past going to tell me about the future, right? What can I, and then therefore Gen AI of not only can they tell me, but can you generate the type of content I need for the future also. So it's all been about the, not, analytics were just the output, but now we are saying how can analytics be actually the input to predict the future. And then how do we take that future, which used to be the output, and turn it into the input to generate the future, which is Gen AI. So we are, I think we are learning a lot more, and it started with analytics. So it was a big, like I said, a game changer when it happened. But that's how we are using data today. It finally made things measurable. All these questions of how do you measure, how do you measure, how do you measure, are still not answered.
We know that there are a variety of mediums to reach out to your customers, your readers, your audience. As a person who kind of leads communication, who kind of oversee that function, tell me what strategy or what is your o- basic fundamental or principle to kind of ensure that your message is going across in an equal manner, be your reader being on the phone, on an app, you're sending across your message in a newspaper or a news website. I know the vanilla answer that you target your audience well, but if you would want to kind of take it further and answer it better.
So I think one of the more important parts is to start with your audience. I'm sorry, I have to start with your vanilla answer, but it is to understand the audience and where they are. Also, because of the fact that marketing isn't for free. I mean, it takes a
Hmm.
lot of money, effort, and time to market and communicate well, right? And for organizations, and at the speed that today we are moving, and add to that the type of economic headwinds that we are facing, inflationary pressures that we are facing, which hope to ease out over the next year or so, I believe. But the margin pressures on businesses are so high that one of the places where they would like to be more and more efficient is on marketing and communication, which means that budgets aren't going to increase, budgets are going to decrease, they're going to be under pressure, which means how can you use the same type of budget to reach and make the same type of impact. That means, Resham, that we have to be able to choose which are the mediums that we want to double down on, which are the mediums that we really want to bet on. And that really starts with the consumer. I don't think that apart from a few lucky brands that are out there, I don't think anyone has the money to just spread around and throw some money at the wall and see what sticks. That approach does not work anymore unless you are a really cash rich company. Like I said, the few companies that are out there in the world. Otherwise, everyone is becoming very, very efficient of where it's there, where we want to talk and where we want to be. And as you spoke about before, analytics and data and insights, which you didn't mention, but insights in terms of taking actual consumer conversations and insights back to the brand, saying because of this data, because of this insight, because of this behavior, we want to be able to push this rupee to this platform and make that the hero. And yes, we will use other platforms as well, but I go back to a kind of a hub and spoke type of model, that what's your hub and what's your spoke, and that's probably better to look at it, because the spokes will receive less budget, but the hub is where you really double down and make your bet as to how you want to go out to people. Because again, I think if you come back, if the messaging is important and if the messaging is very attractive, your consumers will do the job of proliferation for you. They will take
True.
it to 100 million other people, right?
Very
So,
important point. Yeah.
and you've seen a lot of these things, Rishabh, right? You've seen an unknown brand doing something where all of a sudden, because of social media, where somebody sees it, somebody shares it, and now all of a sudden it's out there, and they spend hardly any money. And we've also
True.
seen inversely case studies of brands spending a lot of money yet not much to show for it, right? So
Yeah.
it works both ways.
I understand they cannot be one size fits all, but what would you say? What in today's time is the preferred medium for companies to kind of uh, send across their stories and messages for communication? What
Well, I think
what
the
is
most,
that one medium that most of the companies are preferring?
you know what, I think I would say that digital and social are going to be number one for sure. It allows you higher reach. It's more efficient. It's effective, and it allows you to control the content. And sorry, I tell somebody in the editorial position this, but in social and digital, we don't have to go through an editor, right? We can say we don't have that, the gates that are there to be able to say what we want are much lesser, right? It has to, what are the gates, right? So for social, it's about, does it fit within the vision, the values, the mission of the brand? Does it fit within the
But it will but
message?
it will also it also comes with their own set of setbacks sometimes. because it's very open ended. It's a huge ecosystem where everybody has access to kind of provide you information, receive information. So it's a kind of open web, and it also comes with their own set of challenges. But nevertheless, you're right that digital and social media will be the number one. Now, in just my final question, how do you look at the future of PR? How do you see the role of a communication leader evolving? I mentioned initially in our conversation that I see the lines blurring between different departments and the different functions, wherein people coming from content creation, digital marketing, the whole marketing department. How do you look at this and your overall perspective on what is the future of PR look like?
Hmm. So to understand that, let's go back to why customers hire us at the most basic level. Okay. Now, when you're looking at why do and why does a customer want a communication or a messaging help? The one answer could be that they need help with messaging. They don't understand the science and they want to help. And I think this is where the future of communication really lies, because that is something where it is not only about words and sentences and all of that, it's also about understanding how to speak. It's about understanding what and how does messaging really trigger some kind of action or behavior that the brand is looking at, right?
So
But
you're saying that in such complex world, brands and people, who are the founders of the companies, looking out for experts to kind of navigate such complexities of channels and media to, in order to kind of send across a message.
well, they're actually looking for experts to simplify. They're looking for experts who can understand their complex businesses, their complex consumer, and simplify it into words that make sense, that if they told other people, they would understand. And articulation is one part of what message experts will deliver to their customers.
Hmm.
But what I was trying to say is that a lot of the prescriptive work, which is the how to work, right, is not something that customers are going to pay for, because today that has gotten slightly democratized. I'll tell you with an example. For example, when a decade ago we wanted to write a press release or have a press conference, you needed to know how to do it. There was a science, there was a methodology which not everyone knew, that how to write a great press release or how to do a lot of these things. Today, what is the medium of choice? Social media. Who knows how to use social media? Our kids at 10 years and 11 years and 12 years. The prescriptive method of saying I know how to do this has gone out the window. Everyone knows how to do it. It's about how do you do it well. It's about what you're going to do on the platform. It's about the content. It's about the message. It's about what is the overarching positioning or purpose area that you're wanting to cover, and what is that category that you want to capture. It is becoming actually a lot more strategic and less execution, because execution is becoming easy, right? Anyone can do it. So where is execution strength coming in? Thinking. Who are the thinkers who can think that this type of message will be simple to understand, relevant for the audience, yet actionable and intentionable for them to do something. And therefore then a creative layer comes in, saying how do we take this small simple message and turn it into a great 30-second video, or or a quick infographic, or anything of that matter, and how do we translate that, and then what mediums do we express that from. So as an organization, what we've continuously gone back, and now what we say that we do is that today brands and leaders want help in terms of discovering, creating, and expressing who they are. And it changes from it's changing the route from, oh, I want to be able to be there at the perfect time with the perfect message with the perfect price and go back to those 4 P's type of thing, to I want to be able to discover who am I today and who do I want to be in the future as an organization. How do I create content that resonates with that, and how do you help me express that to people on the right platforms where it would make sense, where the audiences that are there are willing to listen and are comfortable to listen, and it will then thereafter make an impact on my business. This is the question that people are asking, and which is why the PR or the communication model is changing. In our opinion, it is moving towards messaging. Yes, there is a case to be made that execution is just as important, and I believe that. But at the same time, just like they say, poor execution and great strategy mean nothing. To me, poor messaging and great execution also mean very little. So you got to have both things, and you have to be balanced in terms of when you're focusing on what, and that's going to be the future. And from a technology perspective, future of PR is going to be more on how do we automate some of those manual things that are around us so that we have more time to think. I think the future is not in the computer, is not in the technology. The future is in the people, which means that we are going to, as an as a professional community, are going to be forced to think more, think deeper, be more creative. But to allow us time to do that, we are going to be able to use technology and automation and AI and Gen AI to make a lot of the other things that we used to do, that used to take up a lot of our time, automated, simple, easy, click of a button, so that
Definitely.
we can sit and think. Not
Very,
at all.
very practical and less philosophical responses. I appreciate Aniruddha for making time for this. Thank you so much for this conversation. I look forward to many more such dialogues. Thank you so much. All the best.